The House Oversight and Accountability Committee held a subcommittee hearing in which they went after men and women's sports. Now, I'm not saying that anything will actually happen because most likely it won't. This is Congress. You know how it won't get any, they hardly ever get anything done. But Tim Burchett and Nancy Mace made some amazing points. Nancy Mace went after a witness, and you'll get to hear it here. So, the first clip that I'm going to do real quick after my introduction is testimony from a young lady who he was a fencer. Um, Her name is Stephanie Turner. She wanted to be in the Olympics, but she didn't want to compete against men. So she didn't. She took a stand. So you're going to hear that, and then after that, I'm going to go into the two members of Congress, Tim Burchett and Nancy Mace. So here's the first clip.
Howdy, y'all. This is Paul, the Redneck Thinker. What we have here is a channel to communicate. I want you folks to be thinking by the time you leave my videos. Why? Because I'm tired of people talking via what other people tell them to think. So, watch my video and enjoy the chance to think for yourself.
5 minutes. As a reminder, please press the button on the microphone in front of you so that it is on and the members can hear you. When you begin to speak, the light in front of you will turn green. After 4 minutes, the light will turn yellow. When the red light comes on, your 5 minutes have expired, and we would ask that you please wrap up. I now recognize Ms. Turner for her opening statements.
Good afternoon, Chairwoman Green and Ranking Member Stansbury and members of the committee. It's a privilege to be invited here to speak to you today. I started fencing at the University of Maryland College Club team 12 years ago and became competitive within the United States Fencing Association a year later. What started as a hobby quickly became a deep passion of mine. In these past 12 years, I estimate that I have spent over 7,000 hours training and over $100,000 between lessons, club dues, competition fees, equipment, and travel. I have dedicated a significant portion of my life to this sport and competition because, like thousands of other women, I love it. My favorite part of fencing is the competition, the thrill, the fight, the triumph, and even the heartache. But lately, fair, female-only competition is harder and harder to come by. USA Fencing has over 200 self-declared members who identify as transgender. Each time a man competes in the women's category, with USA Fencing's support, it removes fair sport and takes opportunities from women. Fencing is a combat sport, a martial art of sorts. There are elements of speed, power, reaction time, distance control, footwork, and blade work, all attributes affected by sex development. It's not uncommon for a quicker, more athletic opponent to overcome the technique of another fencer. Athleticism is powerful in fencing and works in equal parts with strategy and technique. It's unbelievably demeaning to female fencers to put down the differences between men and women and any woman's loss to a man as a skill issue, or that a woman simply needs to work harder. Within the USA Fencing authoritative body, there is a culture of intimidation towards women which demands that we be silent when men enter our tournaments. A culture that includes public humiliation, doxing, social ostracism, dismissal, and even threats. I went from avoiding tournaments with known male athletes to reaching out to news outlets to get this story known. The USA Fencing, up until my protest, has been unresponsive to women's demands for fair fencing, and instead doubled down on efforts to promote male inclusion in the female category. 1 month ago, I took a knee in protest to a man competing in my category, Division 1A Women's Foil, ironically held at the University of Maryland, where my fencing career began. And the video of my protest went viral. The story of that knee began 3 years ago when I contacted Icons out of desperation for numerous men taking women's national and world titles. Leadership was not only ignoring women, but encouraging and glorifying these men. It felt like there was no place for women in USA fencing. It took me nearly 3 years to get up the courage to come out publicly. That knee I took in protest was a cry for help and an act of desperation. The night before the tournament, I saw Redmond Sullivan's name on the registration list. I recognized his name from a Redux article as a male fencer within Wagner College's men's team, who switched to the women's NCAA team and the women's USA fencing division. I cried the whole night and again felt betrayed by USA fencing. I had already spent the money on competition fees and new equipment and spent hours training and refurbishing my equipment. And I had traveled down from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania to College Park, Maryland the night before in preparation for that tournament. I felt trapped. I had been defrauded of a women's tournament and sold a lie by USA Fencing. This was hardly the first time I faced fencing a man in a women's competition. In previous instances, I would wait until the last minute to register for a tournament to see if any known men would register. If they did, I would not sign up. I missed out on numerous regional and national tournaments. I did not want to keep abandoning opportunities to advance my fencing. I had felt so isolated and strangled by USA Fencing for disagreeing with its transgender policy that I felt scared to speak openly online or with friends in the fencing community. I reached out to a church friend asking what I should do. We prayed together and asked God, if it is His will that I protest, that He pair me with Redmond in about that following day. The next morning, I found myself on the platform against him, and I stood down. Speaking out on this issue has made me a target for harassment and violence, as well as cost me friends. I have decided to step away from the sport I love, at least for now as well, because USA Fencing has fostered an environment where I am unwelcome in my own category. It is culturally acceptable to bully and shame women who speak up for other women. I should not have had to make this sacrifice. Women deserve to be treated fairly in sport. We deserve opportunities to train, compete, and win in women's category set aside for women. We deserve this at the lowest levels of sport all the way through elite Olympic competition. I hope that by taking a stand and raising awareness of the misogyny in our sport, I can help ensure other women and girls do not have to take such risks to receive the most basic protections in sports.
Thank you, Ms. Turner.
Okay, you heard that young lady's compelling testimony. Now, we are going to get into two different clips here. I'm going to play them back to back. One is Tim Burchett, who's talking with the head of Team USA fencing, and honestly, not a fan of this guy. I love fencing. And let me tell you something. I'm a fan of Lee Kiefer. If you don't know who that is, then I can imagine a lot of people don't get into fencing, whatever. I love Olympic sports. I love the Olympics. This past one, with some of the stuff that went on, but I still got to see Jade Carey perform, Lee Kiefer, got to see Simone Biles. I watched the Olympics. I've been watching it since 1984. I'm going to keep watching it when I can. So Tim Burchett goes after this guy from the head of Team USA fencing. Then Nancy Mace is in here, and she goes after a woman who can't define what a woman is. I'm not going to repeat the things that Nancy Mace says because you need to hear this for yourself. So let's get into these two clips.
With this hearing and stay on subject. And I now recognize Mr. Burchett from Tennessee.
Thank you, Chair Lady. Thank you for allowing me to be here. Much has been said about the number of trans athletes that are in sports today, or the lack of numbers, I guess. But I can tell you there's a couple of ladies sitting right here who have been greatly affected by those very small numbers. One is not being able to pursue her passion of fencing, and the other lady has had a life-altering event occur to her because of it. And I I take a little bit of offense to that, being the father of a very cool young lady. I just think that this is something that needs to be noted, and also a lot of distractions been made about cutting SNAP and all these other things, and Medicaid, Medicare, what have you. All anybody on our side of the aisle is talking about is cutting waste, abuse, and fraud. The only people that are talking about making any cuts are my friends cackling to my right and a few commentators on CNN. And all we're talking about is waste, abuse, and fraud. And you have to ask, America's going to have to ask themselves eventually, why in the world are the folks on the left so afraid of waste, abuse, and fraud being cut? I suspect because it's going to come back to somebody's pockets. So with that, I appreciate the time you've allotted me. Mr. LaFelt, did I say that name right, sir?
Close enough, sir. It's Layfelt.
Layfelt? All right, I'm
Yes, sir.
Burchett. Nobody ever gets it right, so
It's a German name, sir. But a lot of people mess it up.
I'm not really sure what mine is. I just East Tennessee. Let me ask you, while serving as chairman of the USA Fencing, you posted a very long pro-transgender manifesto on your blog. Let me ask you, why did you post this? And I would like to, for the record, put that on the record, Madam Chairman. Go ahead.
Without objection, so ordered.
Sir, I posted it in my personal capacity, just over the years having observed a lot of transgender women transition and the success that they had found in fencing and the purpose that it gave them in life.
Okay. And in the post, you mentioned you had no problem with your daughter facing a man in the sporting event. Is that true?
Sir, at this time she's 4 years old and hits me with a foam saber, but does not participate in fencing yet.
Okay. But when she is at the age where she would take this sport on, is that something you would think would be fair, that she would compete with a man?
Sir, we are one of the safest sports in the Olympic movements, and 34% of our events are mixed gendered.
I'm not talking about the safety issue. I'm just talking about the fairness issue, sir. I realize you cover up, and I realize nobody gets poked in the face anymore. I get that, but do you think that's fair? That's just a simple yes or no.
So long as the competitor has met all of the hormonal requirements and complies with the policy, I would be okay with it, sir.
Okay. On Instagram, a commenter asked, are you okay with a cis female? And I don't like these terms. I had to look it up. A cis female is someone who's born a female, I believe is correct, meaning women. Are you okay with them being at a disadvantage? To which you replied, yeah. And to be clear, let's be clear, you'd be okay with a young lady or young woman being at a disadvantage or at a higher risk of being injured in any of these other sports?
Sir, thank you for giving me the opportunity to address that question. That was a question that required a far more nuanced answer than what I gave, and I appreciate having the opportunity on the committee to address that question. I want to be clear in saying that I expect anybody that is competing as a woman, as a transgender woman, that they meet the requirements as set forth in USA Fencing's policy.
Okay. Look, I hate to say I reclaim my time. It sounds like being a jerk, but I'm going to do that if that's all right with you, brother. Is it true that USA Fencing created an equality map? I know it was referred to either of states not to have events in because of what the democratically elected representative of those states voted for.
So there was a map policy that a few of your colleagues have referenced that was passed before I joined the board. It does exist, and it does not exclude any states from selection. To be crystal clear, we have had tournaments in numerous states that are listed in there, including Texas, Ohio, Florida, Missouri, et cetera. It does not exclude any states from selection, and we proudly host tournaments in those states.
Okay, well, I'm out of time. I apologize. Thank you, Chair Lady.
Thanks, sir.
The gentleman's time has expired. I now recognize Ms. Simon from California. Ms. Mace from South Carolina.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the invitation to participate in today's hearing. Ms. Goss-Graves, so-called, quote, expert in women's rights, do you know how many years it took South Carolina to elect its first Republican woman to Congress?
Well, what year did
100 years since women got the right to vote. Do you know how many years it took the Citadel, the military college of South Carolina, to graduate its first woman?
Well,
157 years. So I have a series of yes or no questions I would like to ask you based on some of your previous statements. In your opening statement today, you said trans women are women. Ms. Goss-Graves, what is a woman?
So a woman is an adult female. A woman identifies as a woman, and I actually think it is.
What do you consider a female? What is a female?
So there are some women who were assigned a
You
female
say
sex at
you're here to
birth.
defend
There are some
women. You say you're here to
who were
defend women, but shouldn't you be able to
assigned
define
male
one?
at birth.
Shouldn't you be able to define one if
That's
you're for
what
women's rights?
That's literally what I'm
Ms. Goss-Graves, do women have penises?
So again, I believe that women.
Democrats have
shouldn't
gone so
I believe
crazy.
that
Women can have
should
penises. That's not a thing.
introduced
That's not
to
biology.
their
It's not
anatomy
science. And you sound like a lunatic.
And the women.
Should
that I
young
hear
girls
from
just
at
get
the
used to
National
penises in their
Women's Law
locker rooms
Center
and showers? My next
are not-
question, yes or no. Should little girls get used to penises in their locker rooms and showers? Yes or
I
no?
don't know what you're talking about, but what I will say.
Oh, I
is that
absolutely do.
privacy
We've
in
heard
locker
testimony
rooms
today
is
about trans
extremely
women. Those are women with
important.
penises. Those aren't real women.
Privacy in locker
I'm going to
rooms
reclaim
is
my time. When
extremely
President Trump
important.
issued an executive order to keep men out of women's sports, thank God he did. You said it was sexist.
Yes.
Bullying that harms all students.
Correct.
Is it sexist, yes or no, to protect women from men in sports? Yes or no?
If
Can't
you
answer the
want
question.
to
Is it
protect
sexist to
women-
acknowledge basic science? Men and women are built differently. Is it sexist to acknowledge science? Can't answer the question. Does forcing
No,
little
I
girls
would
to
like to answer
does forcing
questions,
little
but you aren't
girls to
allowing
strip
me
down
to
in front of
answer
men in locker
questions. I don't
rooms
even
harm girls?
understand that.
Does forcing little girls
I would
to
like
strip
to
down in
answer
front of men in the
questions, but for
locker
some
room
reason you're
harm
not
little girls?
allowing
Yes or
me
no?
to answer
Can't answer the question.
I
Does
have
forcing
5
little girls to
questions
shower?
given
I'm going to
you
reclaim
no
my time. You can quit
opportunity.
talking. These are yes or no questions. You can answer
You've
them or
asked
not.
5
And you've chosen not to
questions, but you
answer the
haven't
questions
had-
today because you don't know how.
I
And
know I
it's
actually
shameful.
do know how to answer.
Do you support
questions, but
drugging
usually it
and chopping
requires
off kids'
some
genitals in
amount
the
of
name of
time.
inclusion? Is that a thing for you?
I have to say,
You get off
I'm
on that?
So stunned.
All right, when a biological
by how
man crushes a
insulting
girl
you're
in a
being towards
contact
an
sport
invited
and
witness
sends her to
for
the ER,
testimony.
is that your idea of empowerment? Is that empowering women when a young man beats a girl and takes her, sends her to the ER in a contact sport? Is that empowering women? Is that what that is?
Are you talking about Miss McNabb?
I'm talking about
I thought
any
that was
woman who gets
horrific.
crushed in a sport by a
And
man
I
physically
actually
and has to
would
go
love
to
work
the
with
ER.
Miss McNabb and others.
I'm going to
about
reclaim my
like
time.
concussion
So,
protocol.
Madam
and
Chair, we'll
ensuring
show that the witness. I'm going to
volleyball is safe.
reclaim my
I'm a
time. You can
former
stop
volleyball
talking now. I'm
player.
reclaiming.
This
my
is
time,
Ms.
Madam
Mace's
Chair.
time, Ms. Goss-Graves.
I would like some of that time back, Madam Chair. If a man can be a woman, just identify as a woman, as you say, just by saying so, what is the point of having women's sports? What is the point of women's spaces? What is the point of women's scholarships? If you're just going to allow men to take them away, why even bother? Why bother? The loudest voices, I'm not asking you a question, I'm speaking. The loudest voices on the left claiming to fight for women's rights are the very first people to take them away, steal them, and tear these women down. You're the first to erase them. Mr. Leifelt, Ms. Goss-Graves, you all are shameful. I didn't come here to play with an ideology hell-bent on erasing women and grooming children. That's what you all are. You're groomers. And we're not going to. The chairwoman and I, Madam Chair, I'm going to reclaim my.
This is Ms. Mace's time. Ms. Goss-Graves. Ms. Goss-Graves.
This is a shocking thing to say about
Ms.
women.
Goss-Graves, you are not recognized.
Okay, but I just want to say that is a shocking.
You are not
thing to say about
recognized, Ms.
anyone.
Goss-Graves. The time belongs to Ms. Mace.
Okay, fine.
Like Chairwoman Graham, I've been holding the line for women, standing between perverts and the rights of women and girls. And we're not going to let anyone in this country forget what a woman is. Mr. Leifelt, will you face Ms. Stephanie Turner today? Will you look her in the eyes? Will you apologize to her for the way that she was treated by USA Fencing, standing up for women and girls, women's rights, standing her ground as a woman who only wanted to fence with other women? Will you apologize to her today?
Congresswoman Mace, Ms. Turner was given a black card under our rules.
Will
which
you
align with those of
apologize for the way
International
she was
Federation.
treated? So that's a no.
So,
won't do it.
Congresswoman, if I could respond to one thing.
You know what's unbecoming of a leader? You said this just in your testimony just like 5 minutes ago.
Yes, ma'am.
That you've said several things that are just disgusting and unbecoming of a leader, to use your words. It's unbecoming of a leader today to acknowledge what has happened to this young woman. You just look at her face and look what she has been through. The courage it took her to stand up for her rights as a woman, and other women in other sports all across the country. And you can't even as a man look her in the eye and apologize for what happened to her. And as not one. And I yield back.
The gentlelady yields. In closing, I want to thank our witnesses once again.
Look, do I hope that something gets fixed? Yes. Do I believe that it will? No. Why? Because one, we don't have enough members of Congress that will actually stand up for women. We've got to get this situation fixed. These women should not be having to compete against men, no matter what the sport is. Now, I have said this quite a few times. If you notice, now, I'm a women's gymnastics fan. I am 50 years old, and I said earlier that 1984, I've been watching the Olympics since then. I was 9 years old. Watching Mary Lou Retton was one of the most amazing things that you will ever have seen if you're my age. You notice that there are no men that compete in women's gymnastics. You want to know why? Because one, you have to put years of training into it. They're different apparatuses. The floor is completely different. That's one of the few events in gymnastics that's the same across both, except for the fact that women combine rhythm and artistic ability, whereas the men do pure power. Yet you're not going to see a man compete in women's gymnastics. But you do see it in sports like fencing, you see it in basketball, you see it in track and field, you see it in so many of these swimming, so many of these sports that require power, and they're winning quite a bit. So yeah, I wanted to do this, and it's probably going to piss off some people, but you'll know what? I'm not a fan. And then there's the simple fact of that people keep talking about, oh, trans. I want somebody to disprove me on this one. And you really can't. I want you to go around the trans community. Just go to the LGBT centers that are all over the world, but here in this country, especially if you're in the US, and pay attention to the folks that are trans. You will see a far higher category of them having mental disorders. Now, I'm not making fun of them. I am not attacking them. I am stating an actual fact. Even in countries where trans has been fully accepted and there's still a high rate of these people wanting to self-delete. Why? Because there is far more to what's going on in their heads other than them being transgender or them saying that they are. Now, if somebody is wanting to be transgender, I have met a few that are sane comparatively, but most of them aren't. Also, a lot of these that are going into women's sports claiming to be trans, most of them are just failed at men's sports. And don't tell me they're not. They are. So that's two things you can't prove against me. That there's a higher rate of mental illness within the trans community, and I'm not talking about gender dysphoria. I'm talking about other things. I know one trans person. I know several. I know one trans person that was abused horribly. I would love to meet this. My former friend. We no longer friends, but I would still, even though we're former friends, I would love to meet this person's family in a dark alley somewhere or in the woods somewhere because I would not be polite to them in any way, shape, or form. And this did some horrible things to this person. So, yeah, I'm not attacking people because they're trans. I'm going after the fact of that we do not need people who are biologically male and are male claiming that they're female and competing for women after all this time. This has been Paul, the Redneck Thinker. Y'all have a good day now. Bye. So, folks, that's the story that I wanted to bring you on this video. And I just wanted to say thank you again for coming by. Hit like, subscribe, comment, all that fun stuff if you don't mind. Help me out. So, y'all have a good day now. Bye.